I've been thinking a lot lately about how I spend my money, and honestly, I'm starting to wonder if I've been too strict with myself.
Too strict in what sense? Like cutting out unnecessary expenses or something more extreme?
More like, I've been treating almost everything as unnecessary. I track every expense, compare prices obsessively, and I often stop myself from doing things just because they cost money.
That sounds disciplined, but also a bit exhausting. Do you feel like it's limiting your life?
Exactly. On paper, I'm doing everything right, saving consistently, avoiding debt, planning for the future. But at the same time, I sometimes feel like I'm postponing my life.
That's an interesting way to put it. I think a lot of people fall into that trap without realizing it. They become so focused on financial security that they forget to actually enjoy the present.
Yes, and the problem is that it's not obvious. It feels responsible. It feels like you're doing the smart thing. But then you look back and realize you've said no to so many experiences.
I can relate to that, but I think I'm on the opposite side. I tend to prioritize experiences, sometimes at the expense of saving.
So you're more of a live in the moment type?
To a certain extent, yes. I value travel, good food, and social experiences. I don't want to look back and regret missing out on those things. But I'll admit, sometimes I worry that I'm not being careful enough.
It sounds like we're both slightly out of balance, just in different directions.
That's probably true. The ideal situation would be somewhere in the middle, but it's surprisingly hard to find that balance in practice.
I think part of the problem is how we define wasting money. For me, anything that doesn't directly contribute to long term goals feels like a waste.
That's quite a strict definition. Do you think it's realistic?
Not entirely. I'm starting to realize that some expenses don't have a measurable return, but they still add value to your life.
Exactly. Not everything has to be an investment in the financial sense. Some things are investments in your well being, your relationships, or even just your happiness.
That makes sense logically, but emotionally, it's harder for me to accept. I always think, what if I need this money later?
That's the classic fear, uncertainty about the future. But the future is always uncertain. You could save aggressively for years and still face unexpected situations.
True, but at the same time, not saving enough can create its own problems. Financial stress can ruin your quality of life.
Absolutely. I'm not saying saving isn't important, it definitely is. I just think it shouldn't come at the cost of everything else.
So, how do you decide when something is worth spending on?
I usually ask myself a few questions. Will this experience create a meaningful memory? Will I regret not doing it? And does it align with what I genuinely enjoy, not just what others expect?
That's interesting. So, you're filtering your spending based on personal value rather than just cost.
Exactly. For example, I don't mind spending money on a trip with close friends, but I might skip expensive items that I don't really care about, like luxury brands.
That's a good distinction. I think I sometimes treat all spending as equally questionable, which probably isn't helpful.
It's not. There's a big difference between impulsive spending and intentional spending.
That's a useful way to frame it. I guess my fear is that once I start relaxing my rules, I might lose control.
That's a valid concern, but it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can create boundaries that still allow for enjoyment.
Like setting a specific budget for leisure.
Exactly. For instance, you could allocate a fixed percentage of your income for experiences or personal enjoyment. That way, you're still saving, but you're also giving yourself permission to enjoy life.
That sounds reasonable. It would remove some of the guilt because it's planned rather than spontaneous.
Yes, and it also prevents the opposite problem, overspending without thinking. It creates a structure.
I like that idea. It feels more balanced than my current approach, which is basically just saying no to everything unless it's absolutely necessary.
And do you ever feel deprived because of that?
Sometimes, yes, especially when friends invite me to do something and I decline, not because I can't afford it, but because I don't think I should spend the money.
That can be isolating over time. Social experiences are important too.
I know, and the ironic thing is that those are often the moments I remember the most.
Exactly. When you think back on your life, You're not going to remember how much you saved on groceries. You'll remember the conversations, the trips, the small spontaneous moments.
That's true. But then again, having financial stability also contributes to peace of mind, which is something I value a lot.
Of course, it's not about choosing one over the other. It's about integrating both into your life in a way that feels sustainable.
Do you ever regret spending money on experiences?
Occasionally, yes. Sometimes I look at my bank account and think, maybe I should have been more cautious. But I rarely regret the experiences themselves.
That's an important distinction. You might regret the financial impact, but not the memory.
Exactly. And over time, I've learned to be more selective. I don't say yes to everything anymore. I focus on what truly matters to me.
So you've refined your approach, and
Yes, it's evolved. I used to equate enjoyment with spending, but now I realize that not all enjoyable things require money.
that's a good point. Some of the best experiences are actually free or very low cost.
Exactly. Going for a walk, having a deep conversation, exploring a new place in your city, those things don't require a big budget.
I think I've been overlooking that. In my mind, enjoyment and spending are too closely linked, which makes me resist both.
That's an interesting observation. Maybe the goal isn't just to spend more, but to redefine what enjoyment looks like.
I like that perspective. It takes some pressure off.
And it also gives you more flexibility. You can enjoy life without feeling like you're compromising your financial goals.
Do you think there's a point where saving becomes excessive?
Yes, definitely. If saving starts to negatively impact your mental health or your relationships, that's a sign something is off.
That makes sense. I guess the challenge is recognizing that point before it becomes a problem.
Exactly. It's not always obvious, especially because society tends to praise frugality and discipline,
That's true. People rarely question saving too much, but they often criticize spending.
right? But both extremes can be problematic. Overspending can lead to debt and stress, while oversaving can lead to missed opportunities and a lack of fulfillment.
It really comes down to balance, doesn't it?
Yes, but not a perfect balance, more like a dynamic one that changes over time depending on your priorities and circumstances.
That's a good way to think about it. What works at one stage of life might not work at another.
Exactly. For example, when you're building financial stability, it might make sense to prioritize saving, but once you reach a certain level, it's reasonable to shift towards enjoying life more.
That's reassuring. It means I don't have to follow a rigid approach forever.
Definitely not. Financial habits should adapt as your situation evolves.
I think I've been treating my current strategy as something permanent, which probably isn't necessary.
That's a common mistake. People create strict rules and then forget that those rules were meant to serve them, not control them.
That's a powerful way to put it.
At the end of the day, money is just a tool. It's there to support your life, not define it.
I agree. I think I just need to recalibrate my approach and allow myself a bit more flexibility.
That sounds like a healthy adjustment.
And maybe I should start small. Instead of making drastic changes, I could gradually introduce more experiences into my routine.
That's a good strategy. It reduces the risk of overcorrecting.
Exactly. I don't want to swing from one extreme to the other.
That's wise. Sustainable change is usually gradual.
I feel better about this already. It's less about choosing between saving and enjoying life, and more about learning how to do both intentionally.
That's the key word, intentionally.
Yes, if I'm intentional about both saving and spending, then neither one should feel like a mistake.
Exactly. And over time, you'll develop a sense of what works best for you.
I guess it's a process, not a fixed solution.
It always is.
Well, I think I'll start by saying yes to that dinner invitation I declined earlier,
That sounds like a good first step.
and I'll try not to overthink it.
Good luck with that.
I'll probably still overthink it a little, but at least I'm aware of it now.
That's already progress.
It is. And who knows, maybe that dinner will be one of those moments I'll remember later.
Most likely,
Then it's probably worth it.
I'd say so.